All right, we're keeping it simple today. I asked you guys in the Pure Potential Discord, link in description, buys or sells this week. The people have spoken. They want Dynasty buys. So here are my favorite buys at each position right now in Dynasty. My name is Paul. This is Pure Potential. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to subscribe. You can catch those Dynasty sells next week. Leave a like, leave a comment. Let's get into it. All right, we're going to start with the quarterback position, and there are some mid-price quarterbacks that I really do like right now. I think Dak Prescott, Trevor Lawrence, JJ McCarthy all strike me as pretty strong buys. I think those are guys that I'll be targeting in startups. If I have a need at quarterback, that's probably where I'm starting, especially if I need a QB2 maybe behind a stronger QB1 like a Lamar Jackson or something. Just for the simple fact that in most leagues, I think they're going to cost a lot less than the CJ Stroud, Jordan Love, Kyler Murray tier. I think they could easily provide similar production. So I think that's a nice little value pocket for shopping for a quarterback. But for today's video, I want to go a little bit deeper, off the beaten path a little bit, and I want to talk about Justin Fields. So first, let me just totally acknowledge that it's possible Justin Fields never starts another game in the NFL on purpose. And if that's the case, I wouldn't even necessarily blame NFL teams for that decision. I don't know that he does deserve to start games in the NFL, but I do know that when he does start, he scores fantasy points. This makes him different from typical backup quarterbacks, more like Jameis Winston in a way where, if he's in there, he's going to sling it 40 times. With Fields, when he's in there, he's going to run around. He's going to gain rushing yards. He's going to potentially rush for touchdowns. You look back at his history as a fantasy quarterback. In 2022, he was the QB5 in points per game with 20.5. He had 18.4 points per game in 2023. That made him the QB9. And last year in his 6 starts, 19.2 points per game. That was 8th best. So, you look around the league right now, there are multiple teams that are in need of starting quarterbacks. You have the Jets, the Raiders, the Browns, the Steelers, the Titans, the Giants. Who knows what the Saints are planning? Who knows how long the Colts are going to trust Anthony Richardson? There's even talk about the Seahawks. Maybe they want to move on from Geno Smith. I don't think that would be wise, but it's possible. So anywhere from 6 to 9 teams could be looking at new starting quarterbacks in week 1 or sometime during the 2025 season. And really, what are the viable options for replacements right now? It's pretty thin out there. Sam Darnold is going to be the premier free agent quarterback. Maybe he even goes back to Minnesota. We'll see. Then you have Kirk Cousins is going to get cut. He'll be available. He seems destined for Cleveland. Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward are really the only 2 quarterbacks in this class that are being looked at as potential week 1 starters for NFL teams. And then you have Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Gardner Minshew. Maybe Jackson Dart as another potential rookie that could play, but it gets thin very quickly. I don't think there's a super long list of options that NFL teams are going to view as being clearly better than Justin Fields, who also probably won't be very expensive on the free agent market. And so I think that makes him a pretty appealing buy. And the key piece here is the price, because Justin Fields is being traded right now for pennies on the dollar. We can pull up the Dynasty Daddy trade database, and this one I do actually like. I'm moving over to this one for now as opposed to the Fantasy Calc database, because this one actually shows which rookie slots you're in. So rather than just saying a 2025 first, it'll say the 109 or the 104, which is really helpful because there's obviously a wide range of value in those picks, whether they're early or late. So I like this one, and it gives us a lot of trades. So what I have here, these are trades from 12-team leagues, Superflex, PPR, pretty, basic Dynasty League settings. These are all trades from recently. All of these on the screen here are from the last week, and a lot of these are pretty appealing, right? You go 2 days ago, Justin Fields for the 401 and the 308. 4 days ago, Justin Fields for Miles Sanders. 4 days ago, the 211 for Justin Fields, the 210 and a 2026 third for Justin Fields. So this is what I'm talking about. These assets, what you're going to get with these later rookie picks or with these bench assets that you could potentially swap for Justin Fields, there's no guarantee that that's a productive player either. But the difference is Fields has a pretty clear path to providing production that you want in your starting lineup, whereas these later seconds, right, these bench players, they don't. And so I think that makes him pretty appealing buy. I'm going to try and go get him on really as many teams as I can, because that's just such an accessible price where even if he does nothing, my team can afford to lose the 212 worth of value pretty much every time. Okay, we're going to move on to the running back position here. And typically at this time of year, there is a lot of downside when you're buying a running back. And a lot of times there's more downside than upside. Now, the exception to this is typically running backs that you know have a top 5 or a top 10 ceiling, where it's kind of a matter of asymmetric upside. So buying guys like Henry, Kamara, Mixon last offseason made a lot of sense, because if they came through the offseason unscathed, if they landed in good offenses, we knew that they had the ceiling to return value on that investment. And I think this offseason, CMC could be the example of that. You know, Christian McCaffrey kind of loses this whole season to injury. He's getting older, but we have seen this from him before. He lost 2 back-to-back seasons earlier in his career, came back, finished as the RB1 overall. He's still going to be in San Francisco. He's going to be their guy. He has the whole offseason to get healthy. If he's available for anything less than a first-round pick, I think he's a pretty strong buy for any team aspiring to contend in 2025. But if you're buying a running back that has a realistic ceiling in that high-end RB2 range, and the realistic floor is basically nothing, you know, maybe a flex play, you need to get a good price on that player, because there's going to be a lot of movement over the next several months. The free agent class isn't super strong, so it's not quite as bad as last year in terms of landmines, but the rookie class is pretty strong. It's pretty deep. A lot of teams are going to add running backs in round 2, round 3, round 4, and those guys are going to shake up the dynasty landscape. They are going to change depth charts all over the league. So you need to be tactical about which insecure running backs you're going to go out and target. I think right now, Rhamondre Stevenson is one that I'd be pretty interested in. So Robinson didn't have an incredible 2024 season. He scored like 12 points per game. He had some fumbling issues that did affect his workload from time to time. It's also important to realize that he was operating in the confines of a very poorly designed offense and a very limited offense, probably the worst offensive line in the NFL. They were not scoring a lot of points. But here's what I like about Rhamondre, okay? He turns 27 in February, so he's not like crazy old. He's right around that age apex. But he signed a big contract extension in June of last year, which made him one of the highest paid running backs in the league at the time. And his contract basically guarantees he's going to be on the team in 2025, probably going to be the main guy there. He's a $6 million dead cap hit. And yes, when teams are ready to move on from players, when they feel a player is a detriment to the team, they can get around those cap hits. But I don't think Rhamondre is the type of player where they absolutely have to get him off the field no matter what. I don't think he's washed. I don't think that he's, a negative for the offense outside of those fumbles he struggled with. But again, you have this weak free agent class. They've invested significant money into Stevenson. There is a strong rookie class, but how high is running back going to be on the priority list of this team that has 0 viable pass catchers, has the worst O-line in the league? They have plenty of other needs to address, where I just don't think running back is going to be super high up on the list. Now, I could be wrong about that, right? The Panthers went out and spent a 2nd-round pick on Jonathan Brooks despite all their needs. So this isn't foolproof by any means. But I think he has a better than average chance to get through the offseason as far as this archetype of running back. I think he's proven to be capable of contributing in all phases. You know, he has a season with like 60, 65 receptions on his resume. And I'm not necessarily a Rhamondre Stevenson truther by any means, but I think he's a nice arbitrage to other running backs that I would view as less secure. If you check out where he's sitting on Fantasy Calc, you can see here he's at the bottom of this screenshot. I went ahead and filtered it so it's just the running back position. You've got Brian Robinson way up at the top of this list, well ahead of Stevenson in the Fantasy Calc rankings. I don't really see how Robinson is more secure. You know, he doesn't have a long-term contract with the team. He scored about the same as Stevenson last year, doesn't contribute in the passing game. I think the team is more likely to add running backs than the Patriots are. And then you go down the board here, guys like Zach Charbonnet, not even a starter. DeAndre Swift, again, a guy that I would perceive as less secure or about the same tier as Stevenson. Dobbins doesn't have a contract right now. Rachaad White isn't even a starting running back anymore. Aaron Jones is 31 years old, coming off of a season where he was riddled with injuries down the stretch. Najee Harris is basically just the same thing as Rhamondre Stevenson, but again, doesn't have a contract. He's a free agent right now. He has to go and find himself a backfield that he can lead. Trey Benson, backup running back. Tyjae Spears, exciting young talent, but if you need points in 2025, he is a backup to Tony Pollard, or he's at least a co-starter. I would probably pick Stevenson to outscore him. So I think in this tier, he sticks out to me as the best investment overall. And then you go and look at the trades. Right at the top here, Cedric Tillman, Rasheen Ali, and the 405. I think that's totally reasonable price to pay. Down below that one, 3 days ago, you have David Montgomery and the 406 for Rhamondre and the 207. I like that pivot there from Montgomery to Stevenson. Pick up a second. Calvin Ridley for Rhamondre Stevenson seems reasonable to me. And then you have some other ones that are just ridiculously cheap, right? Nick Chubb for Rhamondre Stevenson. The 306 for Rhamondre Stevenson. So there are a lot of really favorable deals here. I think there are people that are kind of fed up with him or kind of worried about him. And I guess I'm just a little bit less worried than the consensus. All right, to kick off the wide receiver position, I want to aim a little bit higher. So we've talked about some cheaper buys. Let's talk about a more expensive wide receiver, because I think Nico Collins is a great buy right now. He turns 26 years old in March. He's on a long-term deal with the Houston Texans. He was the wide receiver 8 in points per game last year, played in 12 games, scored 17.6 points per game. His peripheral target earning efficiency numbers continue to look elite, just like they did in his 2023 campaign. 0.29 targets per out run, was 8th among all wide receivers with 100 plus routes. It was identical to AJ Brown and CeeDee Lamb. His 2.94 yards per out run was 3rd, and that was only behind Puka Nacua and AJ Brown. So he had an absolutely elite season at wide receiver. I view him as the last of a tier of truly foundational dynasty wide receivers. I have him ranked as the wide receiver 8, and that's exactly where he's ranked on Fantasy Calc and Keep Trade Cut. So why would I consider him a buy? Not because he's undervalued, but because I think that he's more likely to be available in a trade right now than Amon-Ra St. Brown, than Malik Neighbors, than Brian Thomas, or Puka Nacua. I think he's just a guy that you can go and inquire about, and you're less likely to have the door slammed in your face. And that's typically how it goes with those high-end assets. You go and send a DM, or you send an offer for one of these superstar players. You typically just get a decline with no counter. He didn't have the strongest finish to the fantasy season. The offense was looking uninspiring. I think it's a pretty lasting image of the Ravens just absolutely clobbering them on Christmas Day. So I think it's just more likely right now that a manager is going to trade him away as opposed to the other wide receivers in that tier. And if I have the chance to get a wide receiver with league-winning upside that is pre-age apex, I want to do that whenever I can. I think Nico is the path of least resistance. And if we come over here to check out the trades, it pretty much bears out what I was saying, that he is gettable, right? This very first one here from today, Kyren Williams and Jaden Reed for Nico and the 104. I mean, that's just highway robbery. That is absolute theft. I would have traded Kyren and Jaden Reed just for Nico Collins without the pick. Nico Collins for Rome Odunze and a 2026 first. Great trade. Nico Collins for Devontae Adams, the 112 and a 2026 second. Great trade. Nico Collins for Rashee Rice, the 211 and the 311. I like Rashee Rice. I still think that's a great deal. Even this one, trading Jamar Chase for Nico Collins, Josh Jacobs, and a 2026 second. I don't even think that's terrible. I mean, I don't even mind that tier down. You're getting some decent assets on top of Nico to move down from Chase. So I think there's a lot of different ways that you can get him on your team. And I especially love the ones where you can package up some non-premier assets and add another really, really strong building block to your team. And then I've got a second wide receiver for you, and that's Rashee Rice. I hate to play reruns here. I know that I've talked about him before, but the dynasty market simply leaves me no choice. Following his season-ending injury last year, week 4, I argued that Rice was a good buy or a good sell depending on your situation, because he held steady around wide receiver 16 after the injury, despite being a total 0 for the rest of the fantasy season. So in spots where I didn't have enough surplus value to justify holding on to a guy valued at wide receiver 16 that's scoring no points, I tried to pivot. Right? In one league, I even got Saquon Barkley without having to add that much. So it made sense to sell him in those spots. It also made sense to hold him or even trade for him if you were rebuilding or you had a lot of surplus value. But now the season is over. The missed games that should have been baked into his cost are over. And yet his value is exactly the same. You look at his keep trade cut chart here, it's just basically a straight line. From week 4 until now, his value has not gone up, and that just doesn't make any sense. I know that there's probably still a suspension coming. Personally, I don't think it's going to be any more than 8 games, but there's still no explanation for this value because he's already missed most of the games that he's going to miss. Either he should have been valued a lot lower at the time of the injury, or he should be valued a lot higher right now. And I tend to lean towards the latter, which makes him a guy that I'm targeting in trades. You know, you look at the Chiefs offense, Travis Kelce has very little left in the tank. I think he could easily retire this year, but if he doesn't, he's just going to mail it in again in the regular season and turn it on in the playoffs. So whatever. Xavier Worthy has shown improvement this year, but he is still not a wide receiver to build an offense around. He's not going to consolidate a huge target share. DeAndre Hopkins and Hollywood Brown are total non-factors to me, whether they re-sign or they go elsewhere. So barring a major investment from the Chiefs this offseason, Rice is probably going to just slide back into a similar role next year. He's going to produce right away. I think he could very easily be a wide receiver 1 in fantasy next year, and he'll be 25 years old. Now, there are certainly a wide range of trades with him, and in a lot of leagues, you're probably just going to get shut right down because people have been holding on to him for a long time. Some people are just going to want to hold through to the end. But I think there are also a lot of deals here that I would do, right? Like this one, Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill, and the 211 for Rashee Rice. That's an easy choice to me. Rashee Rice, Zay Flowers, and the 307 for the 2025 102. I think Rice by himself might be more valuable than whoever you get at the 102. Rashee Rice for Josh Jacobs and the 209. I know that's not going to be super popular with people after the season Jacobs just had. I think he was a little bit of a touchdown merchant. I think the Packers are going to have to make some changes on offense, add some legitimate pass catchers, maybe change their philosophy a little bit. Personally, I'm probably selling Jacobs at his peak as opposed to riding this out. So I like that value there. Totally understand, though, if people don't love that one. But again, there's a ton of trades in here. You can find inspiration if you just go through the trade database and you look at these deals. Someone traded Chris Olave straight up for Rashee Rice. I would happily do that as well. So I think he's gettable. I think he's at least somebody you want to go and ask about in your league and see what you can do. And we'll go ahead and wrap things up today at the tight end position. And I was looking across the Dynasty tight end landscape, trying to see if I was buying a tight end right now, who would I want? There are not a lot of attractive buy options right now. I obviously love Brock Bowers and Trey McBride, but so does everyone else. Those guys are not cheap and they are mostly not available. You have Sam Laporta. He still carries a lot of value even after his down season. He just lost Ben Johnson. He isn't really a guy that I'm trying to buy, at his current cost. I wanted to put Tucker Kraft here, but after looking into his season a little more closely, I'm actually less excited about him. He might be a feature on next week's video. We'll see. So I ultimately landed on David Njoku, who is a guy I was high on last year, and that sort of worked out. It sort of didn't. He had a little run there where he was really impressive, but he dealt with injuries, missed 7 games at different times of the season. He had to play his first 3 games of the year with Deshaun Watson at quarterback. But I think he would be one of my top targets at tight end, anywhere that I don't already have one of those top guys. You look at his season from week 7 on, that's when Jameis Winston came in and took over. His 16.2 points per game would have been the tight end 4, just behind Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, Jonnu Smith. He was a target magnet, 0.26 targets per out run. That's an elite number for a tight end. It was only behind Trey McBride, Jonnu Smith, and Dalton Kincaid, who does get a bit of an asterisk because he doesn't run all of the routes. But that's really high for him. The only real nitpick with Njoku is the yards per out run wasn't very high, 1.36. But I'm not really concerned about that. The Cleveland passing game was not very efficient. They were running tons of routes. Winston was throwing incompletions. And so even though the volume was high in the end, getting there wasn't always very pretty. But I'm not worried about Njoku being like a low efficiency option at tight end. He's not like Cade Otton out there or anything. There's obviously uncertainty for the Browns, what they're going to do at quarterback, but I'm pretty confident it's going to be better than Jameis Winston or Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Right now, Kirk Cousins is probably the betting favorite to be the week 1 starter for them. I think that would be pretty solid for Njoku. I think Kirk Cousins can absolutely complete those short passes that Njoku thrives on, that he can get yards after catch on. And I don't really think the team is in a position to make massive additions at wide receiver. So I think that sets up Njoku nicely for another tight end 1 season. And he's pretty attainable right now in Dynasty. Checking out the trade database here, there are a lot of deals that I like. Jatavian Sanders and a 2026 second for Njoku. I like that price. Trey Benson and the 208. I like that price. David Njoku for Kyle Pitts and Christian Watson. 2 borderline zeros in Dynasty for David Njoku. Sign me up for that. David Njoku and Jordan Whittington for a 2026 second. Sounds pretty good to me. David Njoku for a 2026 second and Cole Kmet. I think even that's fine because I do genuinely think he has top 5 upside. He finished top 5 last season. If you take out the Watson games, I think that he's capable of doing it again. Anyway, that's going to do it for today, guys. As always, thanks so much for watching the video. Thank you for supporting the channel. If you enjoy my content, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We are closing in on 5,000 subscribers, and I would love to get there before January is over. And if you want even more Dynasty content from me, you can hit the join button underneath this video or on my channel page. That's going to give you access to YouTube membership, where you can find my top 200 Dynasty rankings, weekly private live streams, and private channels in the Pure Potential Discord. Either way, I'll be back soon with another Dynasty video, and I hope I'll see you then.